13-year-old Danielle Cummings sat in front of the vanity mirror of her room brushing her hair. She was an only child of a single mother living in a town on the New Jersey shore since her father had left a few years ago over several disagreements with her mother over child rearing. The big issue was their son Daniel's increasingly effeminate behavior and demeanor. Daniel was a biological boy, but had always gravitated towards the feminine. In toy stores, even at an early age, he always gravitated towards the pink aisle, the one full of Barbies and Barbie accessories. His friends were all girls, and he felt no embarrassment playing with them and participating in their activities. He could jump rope, skip, play jacks and hopscotch with the best of them. His father, a former Ranger and Operation Enduring Freedom veteran, was livid over his son's actions, but his mother always protected him from his father's wrath. She felt that he should be allowed to express and find out who he was for himself, even if that went against gender norms. If he was gay, given that it was the 21st century, it wouldn't be a problem for him. It was becoming more and more accepted. His father, for obvious reasons, felt differently, and after several highly explosive arguments with his wife, finally left for good. He was responsible about sending alimony and child support payments, but wanted as little to do with his wife as possible, and nothing to do with poor Daniel. Daniel was obviously not going to become a member of the 75th Ranger Regiment someday. Even though Carolyn Cummings was willing to allow her son to be himself, or herself, at home, that did not extend to dressing as a girl in public areas where he was known. While she did allow him to have shoulder-length hair and somewhat unisex clothing, dresses and nail polish were definitely out. While the other children, especially the other boys, would tolerate an effeminate gay classmate, public crossdressing would immediately make his life a living hell. Or so the thought process went in Carolyn Cummings' mind. But what he did at home, after school and on weekends was a different story. His room was painted pink with white furniture. He had 2 sets of clothing hanging in his closet, boy clothes for when necessary, and a collection of dresses, tops and skirts for free time. At 13, Danielle had learned to walk gracefully in 2-inch heels, and was actually starting to stuff his bra. While accepting a gay child was one thing, Carolyn Cummings saw things somewhat differently from most people when it came to her son. Whether it was from a childhood trauma such as abuse, or a date rape experience in college, or simply a real hatred of males no one knew. She was just off, not only preferring but actively encouraging her son to become her pseudo-daughter. She had only married because it was expected of her, given the time period she had been born in. Things were changing, but not all that much and not all that fast. She really wasn't sorry to see her husband go. On weekends, she did occasionally take her son to a movie or something in another town where he wouldn't be known. He would be dressed prettily in one of his dresses or a skirt and blouse combination, with age-appropriate shoes. He was allowed to wear a light polish on his nails and use a light lip gloss. He was only 13. While his father had been around, Jonathan Cummings had done his best to interest his less-than-manly son in sports. Football, soccer, baseball and basketball were all tried, and Daniel failed at all of them. The one thing he was good at, since it was of practical use to him given his mannerisms, was self-defense. His father, being a ranger, was an expert, and from an early age did his best to impart his skills to his son as effectively as possible. He taught his son techniques that ranged from simple avoidance up to some that could cause severe pain and damage to an adversary, and even some that could be lethal if necessary. While Daniel would never use these, he had been forced to defend himself on occasion. Since he had broken the most homophobic bully in the school's arm, finally most of the others left him alone. He was just fine with that. On the other hand, he was skilled in some activities that were considered totally feminine. He could twirl a baton or flag, spin a decorative rifle, and cheer with the best of the girls who were on the school squads. He never tried out for these activities, since it would once and for all give his attitudes away to the entire school. While he would have loved to have been in front of the stands in the green and white uniform with the dragon patch that his school's cheerleaders wore, he was smart enough to know that it was impossible and that even with his ranger skills, he couldn't defeat a gang of 4 or more boys determined to take him out. So he just dreamed and practiced with his group of girlfriends in private. Thanksgiving for him and his mother was a small affair. Carolyn made a small turkey with trimming stuffing, green bean casserole, yams, cranberry sauce, gravy and mashed potatoes. Pumpkin and mince pie for dessert topped with whipped cream. They usually had leftovers for a few days afterwards, so sandwiches, turkey soup and turkey salad for lunch was always on the menu. Usually Carolyn did it by herself, since she loved to cook, but this year she got a surprise. Her son, wearing a skirt, talked to her a few days before the holiday. "Mom, I want to help this year. It's something daughters help their moms with, and I really want to be your daughter as much as possible. Of course, Danny, I'd love to teach you. We don't know where or how you'll end up, whether as a man or living as a woman, but everyone should learn to cook. Even just to take care of themselves. A turkey is difficult, so we'll save that until next year, but the vegetables and such are much easier to learn. We'll start with that, okay, sweetie?" Danielle found herself peeling potatoes and boiling the green beans. She then placed the beans in a casserole dish with cream of mushroom soup and topped it with French fried onions. At the proper time it was popped into the oven, while she then boiled the potatoes and then mixed and mashed them, gradually adding milk and butter, with a pinch of garlic powder as her mother had shown her. Everything was finished together, and the two sat down for a pleasant meal. Danielle was very proud of having helped and of having his contribution turn out so well. He then made a curious, but not out of the question, request of his mother. "Mom, you know I've never had a Christmas dress like all the other girls have. When I see my friends in theirs, blue, red or green velvet, I just get so jealous. Can we go buy me one this year? I was thinking dark blue would match my eyes the best." "Of course you can, dear, but are you sure? You'd have to try it on in the store, and there will be other girls, some of whom might recognize you there with their moms shopping there also. Are you ready for that?" "Yes, Mom, I am. I really wish I could be a girl full-time and start puberty blockers as soon as possible. I haven't really started developing muscles or a deep voice yet, but at my age, it has to be right around the corner. I want to find a doctor who will prescribe them, please." Carolyn was actually very happy that her child had made such a request. She didn't have a biological daughter, but transforming her son into one was the next best thing. The fact that he wanted it and was so willing to be completely transformed made it so much better for her and so much easier for her to accomplish. She readily agreed to both of his requests, the Christmas dress and finding a doctor to prescribe the necessary pills to halt his development into a man. Whether or not he began actual female hormones at some point, or even opted for affirmation surgery after he turned 18, was a topic that could be discussed at a later time. When her dear daughter was ready to do so, of course. The first thing they decided to do was call a trans-friendly endocrinologist for the necessary blockers to make an appointment. The doctor had seen an upswing in the number of trans youth with the same request, mostly male to female, but a few going the other way. When the appointments clerk heard Danielle's age, she booked her for the earliest possible date and time, since male puberty was most likely just around the corner. The appointment was right after school, 3 days hence. Since they would be coming from school, Danielle would of necessity be dressed as a boy. The clerk assured the two that this would not affect their perception of the child's sincerity. It happened all the time. Danielle couldn't wait for her first shots and doses of, probably, spironolactone. Next was her Christmas outfit, though where she would wear it, Carolyn couldn't figure out. Danielle had a plan for that, however. There was a mall in the next town from them, but they obviously couldn't go there. That's where everyone from her school shopped, and a lot of girls she knew would be there on the same errand. Between Boscov's, Penny's and Macy's, plus numerous smaller shops, the place would be packed with teenaged girls and their mothers, many of whom were well acquainted with Daniel Cummings. So they went to a much larger mall almost 50 miles away, over the Central Jersey Bridge. They had all the stores their local one did, plus several more. Danny's mom had actually bought a dress in a small privately owned, not part of a chain, boutique there. So off they went one Saturday morning. First stop was Boscov's, and she knew what she would find since she had observed the available styles at the outlet in their local mall. She could look at that one, however, but not touch or really go through the aisles and shop. But since she was now wearing a denim skirt and a pair of heels, plus all the appropriate makeup and accessories, she could shop and try things on to her heart's content. She was lucky she found the perfect dress right there in the first store. It was just as she had imagined: midnight blue velvet with white lace trim at the neckline, hem and sleeves. At a shoe store she found a perfect pair of matching pumps with a 3-inch heel, which she would have to get used to. Her mom even took her into the Sephora outlet for some special Christmas makeup, including a tube of MAC Ruby Woo lipstick. Carolyn figured that even though she was only 14, most girls glammed it up for the holidays, and no one would see her anyway. Or so she thought. They had their appointment with the doctor. He examined her and took some blood tests. He did inform her that she would have to see a psychologist before he could do any more than give her blockers. And of course, she knew that she needed to be at least 18 before she could have complete SRS, if she intended to go that route. They discussed her going full-time and completely taking on the Danielle persona, even for school. Danielle and Carolyn made the wise decision that she would go incognito as a boy until the effects of blockers and eventually estrogen made that impossible, especially in the locker room. She would eventually develop curves, and even breasts, which would necessitate a bra for support. At that point she would definitely have to live full-time as a girl. To be honest, Danielle couldn't wait. If she could have gotten away with it, she'd be living in dresses right then. Time passed, November giving way to December, and the Christmas holiday season fast approaching. Actually, many stores had been stocking and advertising Christmas items since late August or September. Danielle planned on living full-time as her preferred self for the entire break. The only problem would be if her father dropped by with presents. He didn't have very much to do with them, but you never knew what he would do when it was Christmas. It was traditional in Carolyn's family that they would spend Christmas Eve at her mother's house, her mom's brother and sisters, and all their children, Danielle's cousins. They only knew him as a boy, and some of his male cousins were somewhat macho and almost homophobic. Carolyn planned on her child dressing as a boy for the gathering for safety, but it turned out Danielle had other ideas. Christmas Eve day came, and the Cummings started getting ready for the family gathering. There were several traditions involved: dressy clothing such as dresses and heels, if age appropriate, for the ladies, and jackets and ties for the men. Each family member drew a name through a randomizing computer program that kept track of who drew who, so there were no duplicates, and was also uncrackable. Also, rather antiquated and sexist, the ladies prepared the meal as best they could, given age, as the youngest girl could at least set the table. But the guys took off their jackets, rolled up their sleeves, and did the cleanup, which also took a rather long time, given that the china place settings weren't dishwasher safe, though silverware and other accessories were. Carolyn told Daniel, as that's who she thought she would be driving to the party with, to wear his good blue dress shirt and a red tie, with darker blue jacket and slacks. He couldn't wear sneakers obviously, he had to wear his black dress shoes. Since he was quicker, he jumped into the shower first. His mother had a lot more to do, and needed the bathroom longer. Or at least that was the plan. The heck with that, Danielle thought to herself. It's Christmas and I'm going to be myself and come out to my family. Several of my cousins have come out as gay, and they're all accepted. While transgender is a little further out than homosexuality, there shouldn't be a problem with the family dealing with me. So off she went to her closet and pulled out what she actually planned on wearing. Her mom was still in the shower and had to dry her hair, and had a lot more in the way of hair arrangement and makeup to accomplish than she did. Of course, out came the blue velvet dress and matching pumps. From her lingerie drawer she pulled out a red bra and matching panties, plus a pair of pantyhose. While she would have preferred stockings and a garter belt, she couldn't, as she didn't own either one. Yet, she said to herself, she didn't need a slip because the dress had one sewn in. She had already shaved her legs and underarms, and Daniel didn't need to shave his face, especially since he had been on blockers for a month. She arranged her hair to let it fall free, holding it with a silver barrette. She quickly took her bottle of Sally Hansen Rapid Red nail polish, fast drying, and did her fingernails. She didn't bother with her toes as the pumps covered them. She then applied foundation, blush, eyeshadow, and mascara. Lastly came the application of the MAC Ruby Woo lipstick her mom had bought her. A squirt of Clinique Happy Cologne and she was finished. She then went to the living room to await her mom's reaction. It wasn't long in coming. Danielle, I thought we decided that you had to dress as a boy for this. The family hasn't seen you and doesn't know about you. You can't shock them like this, showing up in a dress with no warning. Mom, I have to do this. If not now, then when? I'm on blockers, and soon I'll be on estrogen shots and pills. If I'm going to become a girl full-time, and soon they'll find out. After I start estrogen, I'll develop. I won't be able to hide boobs for the July 4th swim party, will I? I'll have to wear at least a girl's one-piece, probably with a ruffled skirt to hide myself, but I'll definitely have to be a girl then. And remember, Bradley came out as gay, so did Cousin Eddie. He even got married to his partner. They'll all be there. And Justine is a lesbian, she'll be there with her partner. I won't be that far off the usual. If you're sure, honey, I don't want you to be hurt or embarrassed by any name calling. And you do remember the girls have to make dinner. Are you ready for that? After a little more discussion, the Cummings ladies got into their car with their designated gifts, and began the drive down Route 70 to the other side of the state to meet the family. Happily, there was no snow this year as of yet. After an hour-and-a-half drive, turning off at Route 206, they arrived at his grandmother's house. Danielle took a deep breath and pulled her lipstick out of her purse and turned down the vanity mirror. God, Danielle, you are such a girl. You really think you need more lipstick just to go in the house? Mom, I need to look my best. First impressions count, you know. I have to let everyone know that they need to consider me a girl now that Daniel is gone, or at least soon will be. Okay, sweetie, finish up and let's get this over with. Ready? The Cummings ladies grabbed their purses and the gifts they had for their chosen relatives. Danielle had chosen her cousin Janice and had bought her a nice set of ruby earrings, not super expensive, but still very pretty. They had cost her about $40 at the Walmart jewelry counter. Carolyn had bought her brother a large bottle of Maker's Mark bourbon, which she knew he loved. They arrived at the door and rang the bell. even though it was her choice, and she was appearing as the person she felt she was meant to be, Danielle got a sudden attack of nerves. It was, however, much too late to have second thoughts, as she could hear the door being opened, most likely by her grandmother, though it was possible that another relative had been designated to perform that task. It was, however, her grandmother, taking a break from the kitchen. "Hi, Carolyn, Dan." The greeting froze halfway out of the elder lady's mouth. Would you care to explain just what Daniel is doing in a dress with makeup? Is he being punished, or is there something we should know about? Mom, we'll explain it to the whole family at once. Suffice it to say that this is Danielle, my daughter, and we'll be seeing a lot of her from now on. Eventually she's all we'll see. The two walked in and hung their coats in the hall closet, with utter silence blanketing the room. Except, of course, for two of Danielle's male cousins, who thought it was hilarious seeing their cousin in a dress. Billy let out a "God, what a freaking sissy." He was quickly shushed. "So, Carolyn, would the two of you like to explain yourselves now? You said something about this being permanent?" Carolyn began. "Do you all know what transgender means? Simply put, a person's body and mind don't match up gender-wise, and it isn't a choice or a dress-up game. Danielle has been diagnosed by a medical professional and is on testosterone blockers, with actual female hormones to follow. She has a fairly substantial female wardrobe and her room has been redone to reflect her status. Eventually she'll be living full-time as a girl when her bodily changes are so advanced that she has to. Any questions?" Naturally, her boorish cousin Billy was the first to speak up. "So for Christ's sake, are you gonna get it cut off? Gotta tell you, I think that is just sick. Billy, I am only 14. Right now it's hard enough getting blockers and hormones. In this state, and for that matter every state, you have to be at least 18 for the surgery, and live for a good long time in the chosen gender. I have at least 4 years to think about it." Her cousin Janice, age 16, chimed in. "So Danielle? Have you thought about boys? Just who do you plan on dating? Or haven't you even thought about that aspect yet?" "No, Jan, I haven't. I was never attracted to any of the girls in my school, not that any of them would have given me a second glance. But I don't think any of them would dare to be seen going out with me. I'm known at my school, and they'd be thought gay most likely. But when I figure it out, I'll let you know." A few more relatives had questions, which either Carolyn or Danielle answered, and then everyone got back to the party. The older men went to watch football or whatever sporting event was on that day, the teen boys went to play video games in the den, and the ladies retreated to the kitchen, where they were each assigned one or more jobs to do in order to complete the holiday meal. Danielle drew making the mashed potatoes, which she did the same as she had at Thanksgiving. Some of her female relatives asked her more personal questions, though they knew that she was still physically male, and that she could never have children, even if she completed surgery at some point. She was asked if she did her own makeup and nails, and complimented on being able to navigate in 3-inch stilettos, things like that. Eventually dinner was done, everyone refreshed whatever they were drinking, adult beverages for the adults, mostly beer and wine, and soda or iced tea for the minors. The meal was served, the traditional 7 seafood items, and the dishes were brought to the table, and after the oldest present gave the blessing, were passed around so each could take what they wished. The ladies at the table were surprised at Danielle's table manners. She was very polite and extremely feminine in her mannerisms. In short, if they hadn't known, she would have been considered just another girl. Eventually, dinner was over, the table was cleared, and the males began the cleanup. Even the teen boys had a job to do, even if it was only taking out the trash, of which there were several bags, even before opening presents. By pure chance, Danielle's present from her uncle was appropriate for either a boy or a girl. Even as a girl, it was known she was a science fanatic, and so her present was a new chemistry set, with experiments in several areas, including mixing up several different perfumes, as well as various acid and alkali tests. She was delighted. She also knew that her mother had bought her some more feminine gifts that were just waiting under their tree at home. After presents, the adults remained in the large living room to socialize, while the teens adjourned to the basement, which was set up as a recreation room, with an amazing stereo system. Janice hooked her iPod to the input and began streaming her playlist. It wasn't long before the kids began dancing to some of the latest hits. Danielle soon found that her girl cousins readily accepted her, while the boys were somewhat skeptical. They couldn't imagine someone being born male but wanting to be a female, and actually taking steps to accomplish it, up to and including removal of their male genitals. In fact, the thought horrified them. But they had been warned to be on their best behavior and not go give Danielle any trouble, and to treat her the same as the other girls. They did. Naturally, the elephant in the adults' room was Danielle's gender change and new status. Carolyn found herself explaining in more detail just what her diagnosis was, what professionals she had been seen by, and just what her plans for the future were. While the women were basically supportive, they were still somewhat unsure of what to make of the situation. Given that it was the late second decade of the 21st century, transgender individuals had been all over the news, including Caitlyn Jenner, Laverne Cox, and of course Jazz Jennings. Some had even heard of Kim Petras, the pop singer from Germany, now resident in Los Angeles, who had had her surgery at age 16, which was legal in Europe. They had never expected that it would impact their own family, but all agreed that if it was truly a medical condition, they would all be as supportive as possible and accept Danielle as another female member of the family. The males were not so quick to jump on the diversity acceptance bandwagon. Like the boys in the basement, they couldn't fathom a male wishing to be mutilated and giving up their male genitals and, of course, their privileges. More than one declared that they would never accept Danielle, as a girl, but they were promptly admonished by their wives. They were told they didn't have to like it, but they would accept it and treat her no differently than any of the other girls her age. After a long discussion, it was decided that Danielle had the right to live as she felt herself to be, and that her mother would of course look out for her and consult with the appropriate professionals before any steps were taken. Carolyn had decided that of course long before. Danielle's girl cousins were delighted to help her in whatever areas she needed. While her makeup was nicely done, the only lessons she had received were from her mother, and while Carolyn knew what she was doing, it was a fact that Danielle's mother was in her late 30s. Janice helped her younger cousin with some techniques geared more towards her younger age, and advised her that red lips and nails were something that she should only go with on special occasions. Normally she should go with berry shades for both if she felt the need for bright colors. For school, light pink was more appropriate and easier to take care of. The subject of Dani going to school was discussed by the girls. The boys didn't hassle her, but didn't want any closeness just then either, and they gave her advice on fitting in, using the girls' room, if it was allowed, and other topics she would need to be aware of. Finally, the evening ended and everyone packed their gifts, hugged each other goodbye and Merry Christmas, and left. "Mom, that worked out pretty well, at least my cousins like me. Most of them anyway." "I know, sweetie. We have a lot to do if you're going to attend school as Dani come January. And you're pretty good at defending yourself, but I'd like to start you on some formal training with an understanding instructor. Next week you begin at the new dojo that opened up, Rainbow Dragon it's called. almost completely for gay and transgender individuals. Even the founder is TG. So Danielle Cummings started school and taekwondo lessons. Naturally, she had some problems to overcome, and not everyone was pleased to see her in their school or neighborhood. But that's another story.